Our guest today chronically burned out twice in her life, and that led her to develop a really cool method of unstressing, seeing, sorting, and solving your stress.
And Jon, I also like what she talked about the 5 S's, different parts of stress, and how she overcame that to write a book, how you can look forward to Mondays.
This is the Limitless Leadership Lounge, where Coach and Jon learn along with you from some of the world's most decorated leaders. Recently promoted, let's sharpen the saw together.
Are you excited about Mondays? Because if not, we have the guest for you. She wrote the book on it. We're really excited about having Amy Lenker on our show. And just to share a little bit about Amy, she is a leadership consultant and speaker. She is the former C-suite executive and now a trusted leadership advisor to Fortune 100 companies and public sector organizations who has helped leaders and teams all over the world lead and live with less stress and more joy. Amy is married with 2 children, and we're just really excited to have her on the Limitless Leadership Lounge. So, Amy, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. There's nowhere else I'd rather be right now.
So, well, Amy, we got to reverse the tracks a little bit because we got the audience anticipating why you should be excited about Mondays. But I believe the book, I read your book and it was a great one called Cheers for Monday. I have it here as well, is that you had some issues with burnout. And I know that's something that a lot of leaders struggle with that. So tell us the story about burnout and how you overcame that challenges.
Sure. So I burnt out in a horrible way. And I wish my story was that I had an awakening and I knew I wanted to do something different, but that wasn't my story at all. My story was that my body shut down on me and I burnt out and I ended up having over 100 panic attacks in one summer.
Wow.
And so it was the first time since I was a teenager that I was off work for weeks and even months at a time. And so the recovery was slow and it was painful and it would be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But eventually I was able to come through it. And that was my heart in writing this book was how do we create a different way? How do we let go of the thinking that drives that kind of burnout so that we can choose something much, much better?
Let's dig into that a little bit. So, if you were to zero down, because obviously we could talk all day about burnout and how we can overcome it, but if you were, because we try to help young and emerging leaders, if you were giving advice to a young leader and zero down to 2 or 3 ideas to help him or her overcome so they don't burn out, what would you suggest?
A couple of things. So, number one is to pay attention. So,
Mm,
my body had been whispering for months, if not years, and I just ignored it until eventually it started screaming to where I couldn't ignore it. So,
mm,
tip number one is to pay attention.
mm,
Tip number two, and this is something I didn't do, is to really understand your stress story. What do
mm.
you believe about stress? What is the story you inherited about stress? Is it something that you're just supposed to feel every day, all day? Is it something that should come and go? What is your stress story? Because if you don't understand that, like I didn't understand mine, then you just keep recreating this pattern where it may not be the life that you want. And then the third and final tip I would offer would be to surround yourself with people who love you enough to tell you the truth.
Mm.
And fortunately, I had that. I had people around me who were saying, "This isn't working. You don't seem like yourself." I ignored them, so don't do what I did. But to have people around you who really care about you enough and are paying attention enough to tell you what they're seeing.
You talk a lot about one of the big steps to it is sorting your stress. And I love the activity that you go through in the book with all the sticky notes and that
Mhm.
very, very visual activity and the 4 quadrants, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point here later. But when it comes to sorting your stress, one of the key pieces is getting it into the different types of stress, the different buckets, right? So there's 5 different types of work stress, right?
Mhm.
Can we go through those? Not to give away the whole book. Obviously, you got to
Yeah.
get Cheers to Monday, but let's just go through those because that's a huge that really resonated with me was those different types of work stress.
Yes, let's do it. And for all your listeners, they can download it on my website. So you don't have to buy the book, though, of course, if you want to, you can, but you don't have to. It's all on my website for free. So there are 5 types of
Amy,
stress.
I
And
got to
Jon,
tell you
oh,
one
yeah,
quick thing. So
sure.
we appreciate that, but please, listeners, buy the book. It's well worth it.
That's right. It is excellent. Yes.
My CPA would love you because I'm giving these things away. I just walked out of my house and drove up. So the 5 types of stress, and Jon, I'm glad you mentioned it because it's one of the biggest mistakes that I see leaders and teams make is that they don't understand the difference. And when you don't understand that there's different types of stress, you apply the wrong solution and then wonder why you're still stressed. So they all start with the letter S to make it really easy. So let's just quickly go through the 5. So the first one is schedule. When there is just more to do than you have time to do. You may not take breaks. You haven't taken a lunch since 1982, but no matter how much you work, there's just not enough time. The second type is suspense. This is when something's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And while you're waiting, that ambiguity is increasing, causing more stress. The third one is social, and it's the stress of people. When the people that you work with are making it harder to do your job, then make it easier to do your job. The fourth one is sudden, when something happens out of the blue, something happens out of the ordinary that requires you to take action. It requires you to make a decision or do something you hadn't planned on. And then the fifth one is system. When the very system that you're a part of is making it hard for you to be successful. So things like inequity, things like a toxic work environment, or you don't have the policies or the procedures to do what you need to do. So those are the 5 types of stress. And in the national research study I just completed, over 80% of people say they experience all 5 at least once a week.
Wow.
All 5, 80% of working Americans. So this is a really big problem that we have to figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah. Well, let me delve into one of them because
Yeah.
obviously they're all important. Is if you were to, and I know you work with a lot of leaders, if you were to advise a young leader and they're overwhelmed, what advice would you give them in helping him or her improve the system?
Improving the system, I would say to think about what do you have control over and what can you influence. So, Coach, I know that you're a Franklin Covey fan too. So, this goes
Yeah.
back to Stephen Covey's model of what is within my control, what can I influence, and what's a concern that I have no influence over at all. So, if you're in a system that is toxic, you cannot self care your way out of that. You can't self care your way out of being disrespected or treated inappropriately. And in my research, over 25% of working Americans say they're feeling bullied at work, a quarter. And that's a lot. And in my experience, it often does happen with younger leaders, newer leaders who may not feel that they have enough options or may not feel that they have the ability to speak up. And so to really recognize what can you do? What do you have control over? And then ultimately, if you are in a system where you can't be well, then what are your options? What are your choices? If you've done everything you can do and the system isn't changing, how can you take care of yourself? And leaving that system might be the best option.
And so back to the sticky notes, because this is one of the things that
Yeah.
I love about the book. Okay, you got your sticky notes. You're walking through this process with Amy as she's telling you about it, and then you put these sticky notes into quadrants based on what you can control and what you can't. Right.
Yes.
And then you have different strategies to combat the stress depending on where you put it in the quadrant, which I think is so interesting because we all think self-care, that's the antidote to stress, right? But there's actually different ways to handle stress depending on what type it is and what quadrant it's in. So could you talk a bit about that, the control piece, and then also that quadrant formula that you created?
Yes, absolutely. And you described it brilliantly. So the unstressing method has 3 steps. And the first one is to see it. So just like you described, you get everything from your head, from your heart onto paper. And you put post-it notes work the best with 1 stressor per post-it. Then we've got to sort it. We've got to figure out is this important to me? Do I have control over it? And then, just like you were describing, Jon, based on how you answer those questions, your stressor lands in the unstressing matrix. It lands in one of the four quadrants based on, is it important or can you control it? And then the really good news is that wherever it lands, there's a next step for you to take. Because what we know about stress is it shuts down the thinking part of our brain.
Mm.
We can end up in analysis paralysis where we feel frozen and unable to make a decision, or we jump to doing something because doing something feels better than doing nothing, and it ultimately may not be anything that helps at all. So it's a way to say wherever my stressor lands, I have agency. There's something that I can do.
Amy, I got to use one of your S's because one of the things I'm very grateful in my life is I got a chance to speak at Franklin Covey's Global Summit.
Yeah.
And they did something very unique that I had never done as a speaker, is that I was their mystery speaker. And I was on, backstage, and they
Uh-huh.
showed the ESPN video and they introduced me, and I got a standing ovation for 3 minutes. And I was numb. I was like, oh my God.
Oh,
And I'll never forget because I finally said to him, please save some for the end.
that's amazing.
So, that's a memory I will always cherish
That's
because I'm a big
amazing.
admirer of Franklin Covey. I got to get back to your book. So I loved your book, and page 29, because I'm big on working with teams as well. I love this statement. I want you to delve into it deeper. It says, the strongest teams I worked with aren't just aligned on goals; they agree on how they will treat each other. Delve into that more deeply because I think that's so important.
Yes. So when I meet people, and I meet hundreds of leaders every year, hundreds of teams every year, and I find people who love their jobs, and I ask them, you tell me, what do you love about your job? 9 times out of 10, the answer is the people. And
Hmm.
when I meet people who can't stand their 9 times out of 10, the answer is the people.
All
So
right.
people make or break our entire experience at work.
Mm.
And you can be fully aligned on your goals. You can understand the mission. You can understand why you're doing what you're trying to do. But if the people around you aren't treating you well, if you don't feel trusted at work, if you don't feel cared for at work, then you're not going to be able to do your best and you're not going to be able to stay there. So when I go in and work with teams, they'll often say, let's not do any touchy feely stuff. This isn't, it's like, well, too bad, folks. Like, this is who you hired. It's going to be a whole day of touchy feely, and you're going to thank me later. So, because we are neurobiologically wired for connection. And so, when we can understand that on teams, everything changes.
I gotta ask you, certainly I don't want to give away, all your, either your book or what you do with, your workshops and that kind of thing,
Mhm.
but can you share one example of, using your words, a touchy-feely? Because I've always build, and doing different things to build our team, and I've learned a lot of different exercises. Can you share one with our audience that you found has been very effective in helping unite the team?
Yes, hands down. My favorite connection exercise is around values. So
Okay.
each leader identifies their top three values. They'll
Mhm.
often say, well, do you mean my work values or my home values? Yes. The answer is yes, because your values are your values wherever you are. You may express them differently, but the way you move through the world is with the same core values. So
Mhm.
I have everyone identify their top values, and then they share with each other not just what those values are and what they mean to them, but how the team can support them living into those values.
Oh, I love it.
And I have seen it completely transform the way teams work together.
Mm.
You can work with someone for a decade, but if you don't know what they value, then I
Right.
would argue you really don't know them at all. And
Yeah.
when we understand what's most important to each other, it changes how we communicate with each other. It changes how we offer appreciation. So I just worked with an executive team last week, and someone's top value was accountability. And
Okay.
not so ironically, they were a chief financial officer. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, of course, you are in a values aligned job.
Yeah.
So, what I shared with the team was the next time you're talking about the budget, instead of just saying, hey, thank you for helping us get where we are, connect it to accountability. I know how important accountability is to you. Thank you for helping us be accountable. Those little shifts, those little transformations of values, I think are one of the best ways to connect.
Well,
Well, as this is being released, it's really good timing because this coming Monday after this is released, I'm
Mhm.
going to be headed on vacation. And that's something that I'm excited about. It's definitely cheers to that Monday, right? The Monday when we go on
Yes.
vacation.
Yes.
And vacations
Uh,
and time off is a big potential stress relief for
yes.
people. But you mentioned in the book that, sometimes just taking time off for the sake of taking time off and then going to sit on the beach and reading emails, which I don't plan on doing, but I might need some accountability on that, is
Yeah.
not actually beneficial. You talked about a couple other things like that retreat that you took that seemed kind of strange, but going to Arizona and unplugging, right? So
Yep.
could you tell that story and how a leader can take time off effectively?
Yes. I like to think of it as work life harmony instead of work life balance. Because balance, by definition, means you're trying to have two things equal at any given time. Work and life are never going to be equal at any given time. And I know for me, especially when the kids were little, it felt like I was failing every single day. I wasn't doing enough at home. I wasn't doing enough at work. And looking back, my gosh, I was doing enough everywhere. But in the moment, it doesn't feel like that. And so when I think about work life harmony, it's about throwing out the rules of what we've been told we should do and doing what actually works in that season of your life. So
Mhm.
if you are on a beach and you're reading email because you feel like you have to, the anxiety is so high that not knowing what's happening is going to ruin your day. That doesn't sound healthy to me. But if you're on the beach and you log in for a half an hour, do some quick email, and then you're saying, I'm going to spend the rest of the day free and relaxed, that does feel healthy to me. So it's not the activity in and of itself, it's why are you doing it? Here's a great example. So I started writing the book on spring break in Hawaii. We took the kids, and Hawaii is so great because we're on the West Coast. So you gain a couple of hours. So you wake up at what feels like your normal time, and suddenly you're like, I'm a 5 a.m.er for the first time in my life. So I would sit outside by the ocean all alone, and I was writing. I was writing my book. This was a dream. And people would walk by and say, oh, close the laptop. Hawaii's not for working. And it was this interesting moment of, yes, from their lens that made sense, and from my lens I was thinking, are you kidding me? Like, I'm writing this book before the kids are awake, and when they're awake we're going to spend the day sailing and snorkeling, and I couldn't have imagined a better day at that time. So I know that was a really long answer, John, but I think it's about throwing out what you've been told and saying what works in this specific season of my life, and then doing that, whatever it is.
Well, Amy, I hear this all the time, and I've been fortunate to be part of two books, and I know they're challenging for sure. And I do believe everyone has a book in them.
Yeah.
So, what advice? This is a twofold question in the sense that what advice would you give a person that would like to write a book? And then, the other part is writing the book is a challenge, but then also marketing the book. So, if you were to
Yes.
do those two things, what advice would you give to someone that would like to write a book and then help promote the book? Because
Yeah.
I always laugh when people say, and I granted, there's a lot of different reasons to write a book, and it's fine. But you know what? They're lying when they say they don't want to sell books. You don't write a book not to sell books.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Just tell us a little bit about advice you would give someone in writing a book, and then a little bit about marketing as well.
The first thing I would offer is to get crystal clear on why you want to write it.
Hmm.
And if you are writing a book to become a millionaire, you should probably stop writing, because 99.99% of people do not make a lot of money from selling books. I mean,
Right,
that's just the reality of the data. So if you're doing it to make money, you're doing the wrong thing. And
right.
to get really clear on what your why is, because I found the process one of the hardest things I've ever done. I had visions of what writing a book would look like and feel like. And And I'm a huge Anne Lamott fan. I've never met her personally, but I've got this idea of what she must look like when she's writing and she's at a rainy cafe and she's just leisurely putting out these. I mean, I had all these ideas of what it would look like to be an author, and it was none of that. It's staring at the keyboard. It's crying when the editor says, "Where's this last draft?" It's doing 13,000 reviews of edits to where you can't even remember what you wrote anymore. So you've got to get crystal clear on why, because if not, it's going to be so easy to give up. I have talked to hundreds of people who have started a book and never finished it,
Yeah.
or who have it on their heart, but they've never taken that next step. So step one, get crystal clear. Why in the world am I doing it?
Yeah.
And for me, my why was I wanted to share my story to help other people. And so that became something bigger than me, that when I wanted to quit, I didn't. In terms of marketing, I agree with you, Jim. I think, or Coach, I think any author who says they don't want to sell books, I don't trust that. That doesn't make sense. For me, though, it really isn't about selling it as much as it is about getting it in people's hands.
Right.
That's what's important to me.
Yeah.
And right now, in this day and age, we're being sold to all the time. Everywhere we look, it's an ad, buy this, do that, be this. And so for me, the marketing has been, how can I be of service? That's what this book was about for me. It was about saying stress is off the charts. Why don't we do something different and have more joy? And there were times when the marketing team was like, I don't know. I don't think you should put this on your website for free. And like, okay, I get that. And I'm doing it anyway because to be of service. And if that comes with some really lucrative speaking gigs, fantastic. Like, I'm not going to turn those down, but I'm also not going to hold on to what I have found and keep it from people who could benefit. So long answer, but number one, get super clear on your why. And number two, be of service. And if you can figure out how to do that, then I think the right people will find your work.
And you also don't want to fall into the same trap of that burnout that chasing more sales and that
exactly
can lead to. But I got to say, Amy, because this isn't intended to come across as a pushback to the concepts of your book, but it is intended to address maybe a concern, because certainly there's the one extreme where you have, Amy is up after dinner, working next to her dog on the couch until midnight and stressed about your work. But then there's also the other piece of it, and that is that reaching success as a leader does take some hard work. And obviously you put in that hard work. So where's the fine line? I guess what I'm asking is, how much is too much? How do we know? And where's the fine line? Because we certainly don't want to take it to the extreme and say, oh, well, now, I have to take every whatever off and go to the other extreme of not working hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, 100% yes. So I think it's about knowing yourself well enough to know what's right for you. So there is no question that I promoted so quickly because of those midnight emails. There's no question. I was always staying late. I was always the one volunteering for projects. I took on everything I could get my hands on. And at what point is that now becoming a weakness? So our greatest strengths become a weakness if we're not careful. So I want to be an achiever. I want to get things done. And at some point, there was a tipping point to where everything had to be done in the right way. So I'll never forget it. I was a legislative director at the time of a policy and legislative team in a cabinet agency. And we had an outside consultant who came in to help us create performance measures. They were going to do a dashboard for executive leadership. And she came in and sat down with our team and said, your performance measures aren't going to work. Everything is 100%. So you have a goal, you have a stretch goal, and I had 100% in all of them. And she said, well, this doesn't work. And I said, well, I'm not willing to have a goal anything less than 100%. And that was true for me at the time. Like, what do you talk on time every time? Like, that's the only way to run a team. And I look back now and I think, for the love of everything holy, there is no way to be 100% of the time. And what it took for me to get there was destroying the team that I had hired. It was destroying the team that was trying to meet an impossible goal. Because if your goal is 100%, what is the stretch? 110. There's no such thing.
Right.
So all of that to say, Jon, I think there are seasons. I think it's about recognizing that at times the expectations that we have, for me, the call was coming from inside the house. There was no one else pushing for that level of precision, that level of accomplishment. It was actually this internal stress story that was driving it. So that's what I would caution, that yes, of course, there's going to be a component of hard work that's connected to success. But if your stress is so high, it's not going to feel like success. And I talk to burnout leaders every day who say, on paper, I'm crushing it, but my marriage just fell apart. Or I've never felt more disconnected, or I haven't been to a soccer game in the last 3 years. I mean, fill in the blank where we think of success in this myopic way that we lose sight of success in a broader way.
So defining success. And to be fair, Amy, the cool thing is about your story is that your marriage didn't fall apart. Like you still now have your family and have been able to use them to help you. So how important is that as well for a leader?
So important. And what's terrifying to me, there's a new report that just came out last year that talked about the percentage of people who say that they have lost a significant relationship, a partner, a spouse, due to overwork and burnout. And it was over 60%. And that number jumped to 70% for Gen X. So that means that people in Gen X who have divorced or separated, 70% of them are saying my work was a contributing factor, if not the most important factor.
Wow.
So this is happening. This is happening in our culture. It's happening in our world. And it's, what are we going to do about it? Are we okay with that? Are we going to do something different?
Amy, I got to ask you, because you work with a lot of leaders and help a lot of leaders, but who in your life would be a hero that you admire and why?
I know it's going to sound corny, but my first answer is my parents. I
Okay.
dedicated the book to them. They really were the epitome of who I am. The very best of who I am is
Hmm.
from them. And this is where it gets challenging though, coach, because the very best of them can also be taken too far. So here's what I mean by that. I have an unrelenting work ethic from my dad. Grew up in the Midwest. I would never forget it. One time my dad said, "You're not always going to be the smartest in the room, Amy, but you should always be the hardest worker." And I look back and I think, what a crappy motivational speech. Like, maybe I'm the smartest and the hardest worker. But from the moment I can remember, that was just drilled into us. You worked hard. And I
Yeah.
grew up in a family with a lot of love and never enough money. And so if one job wasn't enough, you worked two. And if
Mhm.
two jobs weren't enough, then you worked three. So this unrelenting work ethic without complaining comes from my dad. And
Okay.
there's no doubt that is a huge part of my success.
Mhm.
And from my mom, I get this authentic compassion and love and care for people. Both of those are beautiful qualities that I'm proud to have, and they both contributed to my burnout. So, this unrelenting work ethic that I was unable to recognize when I had shifted into an unhealthy mode contributed to burnout. This idea of compassionate helping everybody, always being the one to say, what can I do? How can I be helpful? That led to burnout. So, both of these beautiful things that my parents gave me, I took them too far. I stretched them to where they became a weakness. And I'm grateful to say that at this point in my life, that's not the case. So I'm able to have my dad's work ethic. I have my mom's heart and compassion, but it's in a way where my own boundaries are secure. And
Mm.
that feels really, really good.
That's beautiful. You know, the thing about leadership, going back to leaders, is that a lot of things are caught, not taught. Probably most things, right? In
Yes.
parenting, in leadership in an organization. So let's just take an organization, for example,
Mhm.
because things are caught, not taught. And your one of the things you said earlier in the book was about, trying to redefine what stress is, and is stress really a badge of honor? Is it
Mhm.
supposed to be a good thing? Right. Or because in a lot of work scenarios, it is considered a good thing. So you have a leader who's modeling behavior like, I say you can go home at 5, but I stay until 8. I say you shouldn't be checking emails on vacation, but I do it. So as a leader, what are a couple of changes that we can make to not only tell our team what the right behaviors are, but actually model them.
I love this because it happens all the time. This idea of I'm going to say one thing, I'm going to do another. And as humans, we know to follow actions, not to follow words. And so being really thoughtful about what is it that you're trying to model? What is the culture that you're trying to create? And there are times where you do have to send an 8 o'clock email, at least in the world I come from. And so if we normalize that, then we also have to normalize that maybe there's a time of day where you're unavailable. So really modeling your own time and your own boundaries. And I always find a way to bring it back to Anne Lamott, but she has a quote that I think is so beautiful. Anne Lamott says that lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. She wasn't writing about work. She wasn't writing about stress, but how beautifully does that line up? So I think as a leader, what you can do is you can take care of yourself by actually caring for yourself, being well, moving through the world, experiencing stress without it taking you down or without you harming other people. That in and of itself shows everyone else around you what's possible. It shows everyone else around you that, oh, okay, I can do this too. And I didn't always do it. And I wrote about that it's one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life. One of the biggest regrets of my life is that I wasn't doing that. I wasn't modeling that you could do that. I was modeling a completely unhealthy, unsustainable version of leadership. And I regret that every day.
You got to tell us the story about you going to Arizona for that getaway, because that was really interesting to me, and it certainly, and also you can add, please feel free, as far as like what would you suggest leaders to do, whether it's something like that retreat or any other self-care strategies.
Can I share a different story first? Because I was actually
Absolutely.
thinking about the one with my daughter. So the
Yeah.
biggest leadership regret that I have is one of the biggest life regrets I have. And it was, I had spent 9 months getting my team ready for me to be gone. I was leading a policy team, leading a legislative team. And for 9 months, I got them ready. And I got the agency ready. And so I go on maternity leave. I have my daughter. And the very next day, I got a phone call from my work. And I took the phone call, and it was about congressional testimony. I was doing legislative work at the time. I was asked if I could take a look at congressional testimony. I am 1 day after having a baby.
Wow.
And that people-pleasing, overachieving, work hard version of me said, oh yeah, I'm happy to do it. I live for this stuff. Send it my way. But it didn't end there. That request turned into another and another and another. And I essentially worked my entire maternity leave. And I can't get that time back. I can't say I know better now. I want to do better now. And what I regret so much about that experience is that not only did I miss the time with my daughter, which hurts my heart so much, but also what I was modeling to every single leader in that organization.
Yeah, wow.
When I think about the young people who were wondering if they wanted to be an executive in that company, if they looked at me and said, wow, that's what it takes to be a leader here. You're going to be responding the day after you have a baby. That's what it means to be a leader here. And it breaks my heart.
Wow.
And it's why I'm such a good coach, because I've been there. I've made every mistake. I haven't yet. Well, that's not true. There are some mistakes I think, oh God, I haven't done that one. But most leadership mistakes I've made, like, I get it. There's empathy and compassion. And so that was the story I was talking about, Jon, just this notion of doing what felt right in the moment. But this version of me would have said, hell no. Hell no, I'm not going to look at congressional testimony, because my team was ready to do it. And it made them feel like I didn't trust them. They had an opportunity to shine. They were ready to take it, and I didn't. I kept it, not because I didn't trust them, but because I was just on autopilot doing what I'd always done.
Wow. Yeah, and same thing with another story you told in the book about doing that right in front of your coach, right? So it's really runs deep when you're burned out and when you have that. I mean, I'm a people pleaser as well. I say yes
Yes.
more than I probably should to things, and it's almost, I don't know, it's addictive. It's something deep
Yes.
within us.
Yes, and I think that the very best leaders I work with, they all have coaches, therapists, and usually both. Because
Mm.
this is the world of being human. And so I always tell people reading Cheers to Monday is not going to cure you of being a people pleaser. I mean,
Mm.
that stuff runs deep. Like I've been working on it in therapy for years. I've read all the books, I've done all the things. It's because it comes from a place that's much, much deeper than that. It's not just about work. It's these patterns, these stories that we believe that we need to unlearn.
Yeah, that's well said. Well, I get a flip because both of us are admirers of the late Stephen Covey. And one of the
Yes.
things that my question will be, but the thing that, and obviously I saw Stephen speak once in person, but I've never met him
Mhm.
because he had passed when I got a chance to
Yeah.
speak to Franklin Covey. What I admired from away was the fact that he seemed like he had great life harmony with work, in the fact that
Mhm.
he had a lot of children.
Yeah.
He seemed like one of the things that one of my speaker friends always said, "Are you the same person on stage as off stage?" And to
Yeah.
me, I felt he was living. But I'm curious, what did you learn from Stephen Covey?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I think that. And I think the Seven Habits book was life changing for me.
Yes.
This idea of we overcomplicate things. And if we can just simplify and come back to that core intuition, that there's so much more wisdom in us than we give ourselves credit for. And I think that he was the first one that I know others have written about it, but it wasn't until I read his work that it
Mhm.
actually connected to me. When his son endorsed Cheers to Monday, I was speechless. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say when I got the email, I literally started screaming. My husband came running in, my daughter came like, "Oh my God, mom, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes, you're never going to believe what just happened." But of course, my imposter syndrome, I spent a few minutes like, is this a joke? Like, did someone create a spam account? Like, because if so, like, that's just cruel if someone created a fake account. But it really was him. And so it meant more to me than I can even put into words.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. And you talk about mentors, your parents, you talk
Yeah.
about the Coveys, amazing mentors as well and people to
Hmm.
learn from. You've mentioned also reading a lot of books, and
Hmm.
as a leader, it's so important to stay engaged with the good books, good to help on our leadership journey. Are there any others that you'd suggest? Because obviously you've achieved a lot of success in leadership and now continue to sharpen the saw.
I love that. I do. I'm an avid reader, and I think that the best leaders are the best learners. And so there are dozens I can think of. The few that stand out to me that have really changed how I lead. The first one that I think of is Dare to Lead. Brene Brown's work around
Mhm.
vulnerability and courage. And the first time I read it, I thought, gosh, I want to do this work. And so I went on to get certified as a Dare to Lead facilitator, where I can share that work around courage in organizations.
Mhm.
I love Dr. Amy Edmondson's Fearless Organization, that we have to know how to build psychological safety. How are we going to maintain it? I'm an Adam Grant fan. I mean, embarrassingly so. So I think, especially his around how we think and how we are present in the world is changing every single decision that we make. I'm looking back at my shelf here. Oh, and Greg McEwen. So when I
Yeah.
read his on essentialism, it really shifted not just how I lead, but how I run my company. So this really radical and yet completely simple idea that you cannot have multiple priorities. You cannot have 27 things that are the top thing. And I actually credit his book to me writing my book. He had
Wow.
come out with a journal a few years ago, and they came in a 3 pack. So I bought 4 of them. So I was set for the whole year. And it was basically you identified the 2 things you were going to do that year, and everything else was off the table. And I thought, wow, okay. And that was what it took for me to write the book. So I could name 100 of them, but yes, I read all the time. I love podcasts. I just devour information.
Amy, so we're getting close to the end, and we're very
Yes.
grateful to have you
Oh,
on. We've loved your insights and your stories, and I'm going to circle back. You did bring up this word, and I think it's really important because when I speak to leaders, I always ask them how important in building teams is trust, and it's always 100%. Everybody says.
yeah.
I'm curious, what advice would you give a young leader taking over a team and how they could build trust with that team?
Yes, I think, and again, not to be too Covey fanatic, but it's the model that I use most often. This idea of your character and your competence. So,
Mm,
as a leader, don't leave it to chance. Don't hope that you can accidentally become a high trust leader, but how do you very intentionally model here's what my character is, here's what my competence is, and help them do the exact same thing. I think that combined with Brene Brown's work on vulnerability, that you can't have one before the other. So
mm,
a mistake I often see leaders make is, well, I'm not going to be vulnerable yet because they don't trust me. They're not going to trust you until you're vulnerable. So
right.
really just going in and being the most authentic version of you, I think is the only way to do it. And to listen a lot more than you talk.
Mm.
I think if you think about at the end of the day, how much time did I spend listening versus how much time did I spend talking? The very best leaders in hands down are going to have a percentage very, very different. They're going to listen a whole lot more than they talk.
It's
Well said.
wonderful. Well said. Amy Lenker is the author of Cheers to Monday. It's available wherever you get your books. And the cool
Get a
thing
double
is,
dose here.
there you go. And the cool thing is that Amy's also a fan of tongue twisters. So I had to practice this before the episode. But you're all about seeing your stress, sorting your stress, and solving your stress. And now you're in the phase of celebrating your stress.
Yes.
So, while celebrating the end of your stress, or at
Yeah.
least the better management of it. So, tell us what's next for Amy.
Thank you for asking. Yes, so I am in that phase of now the book is out. And so I'm having a blast spending time going all over the country, just sharing with leaders and teams what this book is all about. What's next for me is already thinking about how do I want to scale it? So, how do I want to share this method with as many people as possible so that we can have less stress and more joy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're certainly on board. And again, grab that Cheers to Monday. A link is down in the show notes, and more information on Amy down in the show notes as well, and how you can connect with her as far as speaking and other engagements too. And just don't you dare try to email her at midnight. She won't be there ready to reply for you.
That's right.
But Amy, we can't thank you enough for
Oh,
your engaging insights today, and just the power of what you've written and the message that you share. I think will help so many leaders, and much needed in our world.
thank you. And coach, I have to say, it is wild to be here with you because I know I shared this with you off camera, but I want to share it so your listeners can hear it too. That when I first became a Franklin Covey trainer, they showed the video of you.
Okay.
And it was the first time I had seen it since I was younger. I remembered, and I started crying in the certification class.
Oh my gosh.
And the trainer said, "Are you crying?" I'm like, yes, I remember watching this video when I was younger, and it stuck with me so much. And I was so honored to be part of a training who valued what you brought into the world.
Oh, thank
And
you.
so to be here with you is an absolute privilege. And I am so, so grateful I got to see you today.
Well, thank you very much. And I really look forward to continue to grow our relationship because I really admire what you're doing. And thank you for your kind words. I will say one little quick sidelight. I show that video often at part of my, or usually the beginning of most of my presentations.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I've seen that video over 1,000 times, if not more. And yet I don't know how I'm going to react to it. Sometimes I can't get words out because I still get choked up. I mean, that's how much it meant to me. So,
Yeah. Oh, thank
so
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for your time today, and we're excited to stay connected.
Sounds great. Have a great cheers to Monday.
Cheers to Monday.